This is a sermon from Hounslow Town Church. We meet every Sunday at 9:45 in the Arts Center, located in the Treaty Center on Hounslow High Street. For more information and resources, please visit hounslowtownchurch.org.
Today's our last series in Psalms. We've been studying Psalms over the last 8 weeks. And so it's been a short sermon series. Next week, Tucker is going to begin a series for us on 1 John. And as I've done each week in these sermons on Psalms, I've begun by asking you a question. And the question for this week is this: how do you act around unbelievers? How do you act around unbelievers? When you're with those who don't share your faith, when you're with those who are of a different faith, can I ask you, how do you act? What do you say? What do you do? How do you act around those who are not followers of Jesus? You know, for many of us, the thought of interacting, of talking to someone of a different faith background can produce fear and anxiety and confusion in us. It can. I remember when I first moved to this country in 2005, and I came here to do the job that I'm doing right now, which is to teach the Bible, and through teaching of the Bible to tell others about Jesus. I remember when I was on the plane, literally I was on the plane flying over to the UK, and I thought to myself, oh my, what have Amy and I done? We've quit our jobs. We were in a different job. We sold our house. We've left it all to come here. And I thought to myself, in fear and anxiety, I thought, who is going to listen to me? What do I have to say? And I remember being afraid. You know, God, in His Word, and in this psalm in particular, we have what I want to argue is a roadmap for how we as followers of Jesus are to interact with the world around us, and in particular, the unbelieving world. There are several commands in the text, but three of them I want to highlight and draw out. We see them, and if you have Bibles, I encourage you to look there in verses 1 and 7 and 10. Here are the commands. The command to sing, the command to ascribe. I'm going to have to explain that word. And then the command to say. Verse 1, the command, sing to the Lord. And in our singing, we are to declare His glory, the Lord's glory among the nations. Verse 7, to ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. And lastly, verse 10, to say among the nations, the Lord reigns. So there are commands for us, and we'll even see all of creation, to speak to God and to the nations around us. So we are to sing, ascribe, and say. Putting that into a helpful outline, which is on the screen. I was told these are some bigger words for us, but I like these words, so we're going to go with them. To sing, we will see here in verses 1 to 6 that our witness, you know, how are we to be towards the surrounding unbelieving world? We are to witness to them. There are three ways we can witness to them. One is through orthodox worship. I'll explain what that means. Secondly, we're to witness to them with confessional clarity. And lastly, with joyful proclamation. So let's consider first worship. The song begins with a call to sing, verse 1. It also ends, verse 12, with a call to sing. And if you notice closely, I only noticed this closely when I was preparing this week. But if you notice closely, it's the psalm writer calls nature to sing. It's very strange. Technically, he's not calling us to sing. He's calling creation to sing. So if you, like me, if you read it, and it's okay to read it and assume yourself in it, because we actually are a part of the earth and creation, but technically it's the created things around us, the earth and the trees that are called to sing the glory of God. The Hebrew word for earth in verse 1 is the word eretz, And it's commonly translated as dust or land or earth or ground. And it can also include the peoples of the world. We did see that in Psalm 66. It was clear earth there also meant peoples of the world. But I want to focus very narrowly on creation. In verse 12, it's clear there. It's the trees that are singing. In other words, the psalmist calls everything, all created things, to praise God before everybody in the world. Nature is to sing praise to God, but in so doing, talk to the human race. Now, I wonder if you know this about nature, that it says something to us about God. Do you know that? That it says something to us. And when you sit out on a evening, you can't really do this in London, but if you sit out in the countryside and you look up in an evening night at the stars, you gaze into the heavens speak to us. And they declare something to us. They speak to us of the one who made them and who placed them there. The heavens declare a message to us. Also in London, you can do this in London. You can't look and you can't really see, you kind of can see the stars in London, but the lights of the city don't make it ideal. But here's something you can do in London. In London, you can walk the streets at night. And if you've been here for some time, you probably have had this experience. If you walk too closely to a bush or a rubbish bin, if you go too closely to something, you might suddenly see the most popular animal of London. Well, it'd be the second most popular. I suppose the rat is the most popular, but the fox is number 2. Have you ever had the experience of startling a fox? I have. I walked too closely to a shrub, to a tree, to a bush, and I was faced with this fox, and it growled at me. That growl says something theological to us. That interaction speaks to us theologically. And what the fox is saying is that this world that we live in is an unsafe world. It felt threatened. It was expressing that not is all that it should be. And in some ways is even growling at me, a son of Adam, telling me that because of Adam, my forefather, and because of my sin, we have broken this world. We have brought suffering to this world such that the fox would growl at me. In some ways, the fox was saying to me that it had an issue with me because I have an issue with its creator. This is what I'm describing here is what theologians call general revelation, right? General revelation, different from special revelation, but general revelation is the knowledge of God that is accessible to all people through the natural world, like creation and like our human consciousness. It means that God has revealed himself through his works, making his existence known, speaking through the creation, speaking of his power, and that really then is evident to all. Such that we actually don't need special revelation to know that God exists and to know of his power and of his glory. Thankfully, we do have special revelation because it tells us so much more about Jesus and how God saves us. And it tells us even more about how we are to understand God. But here we have special revelation, the Bible telling us in Psalm 96, calling on nature to do its work of general revelation. Nature is to sing to God. Verse 3, it's to declare the glory of God among the nations, his marvelous works amongst all the peoples. So the call is for nature to sing. Why? What the psalmist tells us, verse 4, for great is the Lord and greatly to be praised. And then the next bit, it goes into worship. Verse 5, and nature tells us how we are not to worship. Verse 5, it says, for all the gods of the peoples are worthless idols, but the Lord made the heavens. So nature, what is it telling us? It's saying to worship God, but it's also saying don't worship us. Nature says worship the one who made all things, but don't make idols out of us and worship us. So when you look at the sun, the sun is saying, don't worship me. The moon says that. The stars say that. Probably no one has ever found gold in the ground, but if you ever found a nugget of gold in the earth, that gold will say to you, do not worship me. The trees are saying that. We see that at the end of the psalm. The trees, the animals are saying, don't worship me. Don't make a monkey into a god. Don't make an elephant into a god. Don't melt down gold and make an idol and worship it. Or if you don't have money, don't take a tree, don't take a piece of wood and carve it and make it into a god and worship it. Make it into an idol. In other words, nature is saying there is a right way to worship. There's orthodox worship. Orthodox simply means correct worship. Ortho, correct, right. Dox meaning worship. Orthodox worship is very simple here, isn't it? It's worshiping and glorifying the one true God and not replacing him with anything that is created. And yet, even though it's simple to understand that, it's simple in our minds to get that straight, we can say, okay, I can do that. And yet, sadly, we fail at that spectacularly. John Calvin, theologian, pastor, author, famously said, the human heart, my heart, your heart, he says, is a perpetual idol factory. That means it just keeps making idols and finding ways in which you worship anything other than God, but those anythings are always created things. And it's a sad thing that we do that. It's a sad thing, and here's why. Because when we are placing our worship and placing our hope and placing our life into something the scripture says here, it's sad because it's actually, and it truly is worthless. Created things have no weight to them. They have no everlasting worth to them. And so what the trees say to us, when they say don't worship a wooden idol, they're saying we have no eternal glory. There's no weightiness to us. The glory of God. What is the glory of God? What does glory even mean? Right? The glory of God is God's supreme importance in all things. The word can also mean weightiness. It can mean heaviness. It's that which is important. So as you consider the glory of God and the reasons you would worship him, and you compare him to anything else, whatever it is, it's created. In the end, it is weightless. It lacks the heaviness of God. It's weightless such that it will collapse. When you put your hope on it, it will collapse because it can't hold up. It's not strong. That's why earlier I talked about our confession as being heavy. You can stand on it. It will hold you because God, the God behind who gave us those confessions, who revealed his truth to us, is strong. His word will last. And yet our idols, they don't. They collapse. And yet sadly, we entrust our lives to these idols. This last week as I was preparing, I heard this about J.R. Tolkien. I often quote from Tolkien. And in the Lord of the Rings series, the bad, evil villain of it is this guy named Sauron. And the story is that Sauron put his whole essence, all of his power into a ring, the One Ring it's called. And the way to kill Sauron is to destroy the ring by putting it into the lava and the mountain of which it was made, called Mount Doom. And a critic, when The Lord of the Rings was put out, an early critic wrote to Tolkien and said, your story is weak. Your story, it concludes in such a weak way, and that this great evil villain is so easily destroyed by throwing this silly ring into the lava of Mount Doom. You have a plot problem, Tolkien, is what this critic was saying. And Tolkien wrote back and said, no. He said, you don't understand the human heart. You don't understand idolatry. You see, Tolkien understood who we are. And he understood how we in evil can so pour all of ourselves into a created object. You see, that's what Sauron had did. All that he was, he invested and he poured into this one ring. And yet it was weightless. It so easily then just melted away and was nothing. See, that's idolatry. That's the problem that we have when we worship something that's created. And it might be a gold ring, or what a gold ring represents in the person of marriage. It might be gold coins. It might be the job that gives you gold coins, which is money. Or it might be the person who you think will bring you gold coins. Or the love of a person who makes you feel good about yourself in ways which gold can't buy. Whatever the idol is, whatever it is that you are hoping for, that you put your hope in apart from God, whatever that is, it's an idol. It's created. And because it's created, it has no glory. It has no weight to it. There's no heaviness to it. It's such that when you put your life upon it, it will fail you. Right? When something in your life is an idol, because you realize it's most precious to you. And you realize that if you lose it, you are ruined. You are melted. You are undone. So the most loving thing really anyone can do, the most loving thing creation can do, is to sing praise to God and to tell humanity, worship the one true and living God. Declare his glory. Declare his supreme importance. To call humanity to worship that one and to hope in that one and to know that one and to love that one. As you think of your life, can I ask you, what is it that apart from God that is your precious? What is it that if you had lost, if you lose it, that you would become undone? You would melt away? What is that thing? Is it a job? Is it a marriage, possible marriage? Is it money? Is it status in this country? What is it that you so hope in and desire more than God? Can you not see that is not eternal? Whatever that is, it's created. It will not last. If your hope is in it, it will let you down. Can you not see how much more our hope, our life, our faith needs to rest in God? And whatever that thing is, in your heart, not in real life, because those things are often good things, but in your heart, smash that idol and place your hope in the only one who is weighty enough, who can bear up and who is supreme enough to be worthy in your life, and who is worthy of all your hopes and your love and your dreams. So when we worship the one true and living God, we are declaring to the world that he alone is worthy. So there is a witness to our worship. That's why we here in this church, we want to invite people to come along. If you're an unbeliever here, we want you to see us declaring that God alone is worthy. So there's a witness of our worship. Secondly, there's a witness of confessional clarity. Verse 7, Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the peoples. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. You know, I myself had to look up the word ascribe to make sure I understood what it means. It's a word that we don't use very often. Perhaps it's an old-fashioned word. But it means this. It means to regard or to confess something which is true about another person. And the verse says that here that the families of the peoples are to do this, and we're to do this together. Together, the nations of the world are to ascribe or to confess that God is glorious. We're to confess and ascribe to God the glory and the strength that is due his name. This really, I find it really remarkable. The command here is for all the diversity of humanity, all the families of the nations, the families of the peoples, it says. We're to come together in our diversity. We're to come together in unity. And in unity to declare, to confess, to ascribe to God all that is true and all that is good and all that is glorious about him. That's why it's good for us to regularly, we do this at Hounslow Town Church, to regularly confess our faith and to do it through historic statements that the church has used down through the ages and across the whole globe to ascribe glory and strength to God. Statements like the Apostles' Creed, right? Like the Nicene Creed, which I don't think we've done here at Hounslow Town Church, but we should do. We do regularly the Westminster Shorter Catechism. These are historic statements that God's people have used. And so when we do that, we stand with the families of the peoples. We stand with God's people all over the globe, down through time, down through the ages, ascribing to God his greatness as the Creator, his goodness as our Savior, and of his glory as our King. You know, our confession, when we confess our faith, it's a witness to the unbelieving world. And I want to argue, actually, I think it's a powerful witness. Because in part, it's an invitation for them to join in, right? When all the churches around the world, when we unite in confessing our faith together, and those who are outside of that say, what are you lot all on about? It's an invitation for them to join in. It's an invitation for them to belong to something that is greater than any one person can know by themselves. To belong to something that is historic, that is rooted, that is grounded, that is truly multi-ethnic, truly multicultural, and multinational. You know, I recognize that being a part of a larger group, of reading a confession that was written, in the case of the Apostles' Creed 1,500 years ago, is something that is countercultural, just like membership is. You know, we live in a time of individual expression in which we are told constantly to be true to yourself and to create your own story, to create your own media, to express yourself in your way using your words. And along comes Hounslow Town Church, and we say, no, we're going to read this together. It's not creative. It's not expressive. In it, we unite ourselves with so many others. You know, the danger. Let me say this. I want us to be expressive. There's a lot of good in that, but there's a danger, I think, lurking in self-expression, and it's this: that you literally, when you create your media, when you tell your story, when you express yourself, you literally are standing alone. I mean, it's the very nature of how you make it, you're alone. And when so whether you're filming yourself or you're out there crafting your own media, you want to do it in a way that is truly unique to you, right? Do you hear how lonely that is? You're alone in doing that. So by all means, make good art. By all means, make good media. Please do that. I enjoy watching reels that we make. So keep doing that. But don't do it alone. Here's the thing about life. Don't be alone. Don't stay alone. Yeah, when you're in your studio and making something to express yourself, you are alone, but don't stay there. Don't be so alone that you so differentiate yourself and that in your self-expression you so isolate yourself, and especially in your faith, you so isolate yourself from the historic and the orthodox and the universal and the multi-ethnic people of God. Do you see the danger in being truly creative? Is that you're going to create something that so isolates yourself. Yeah, it's your thing, but you know what? You're alone in that. What good is that? Especially if you're wrong. Instead, remain connected. Remain grounded. Remain rooted. Remain historic. Remain involved in a church that is a part of the universal body that confesses its faith and stands with God's people all across the globe, all down through time. And that seeks to clearly and boldly and confidently and joyfully ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. You know, in an age of change, which we're in right now, in an age of self-expression, right? Everything actually is weightless. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow. The phrase is liminal. In an age, the glory and fame on social media is here today, gone tomorrow. It's forgotten. People, we have a genuine desire for that which lasts, for that which connects, and for that which remains. And that's found in these things. So can I encourage us? Ascribe to the Lord, O families of the people. Root yourself in the universal church. Ascribe to the Lord the glory of strength, the glory of his glory and his strength. So there's a witness of worship. There's a witness of confession. Lastly, there's a witness of our joyful proclamation. To proclaim is simply to say. Verse 10, say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Yes, the world is established. It shall never be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Here's a very clear call, isn't it? It's a clear call to evangelism. And here's also, in what we're to say, it's a very good gospel statement in summary. As God's people, we are to say to the nations that God reigns over all, that he made everything, that he's our creator, that he's our sustainer, that he holds everything together, and that he will judge the nations and he'll judge us with fairness and without bias. You know, that all is meant to be seen as good news, that the Lord reigns. Yeah, can I ask you, do you see Judgment Day as being good news? When you think of Judgment Day, we often don't think of it as good news, but look at this text. Look at how this text sees Judgment Day. How will the foxes that growl at us on the London streets view Judgment Day? Here it is, verse 11, let the heavens be glad, and let the earth rejoice, let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he comes. For he comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in his faithfulness. See, Judgment Day, really, for creation, is a glorious day. It's the end of suffering. It's the end of sadness. On Judgment Day, sinners will be punished, and the righteous will be rewarded. and creation will no longer groan under the weight of human sin. It's a day when everything will be made new, and creation, the earth, the heavens will respond in celebration. Can I ask you, as you think of Judgment Day, how will you respond on that day? Will you be amongst those who worship and who celebrate, who know the removal of sin from your body, who will know the weight of sin no longer rests on you? Will you be in that group? Or will you be in the other group of those who know the weight of the punishment of sin, who will know that they then have sinned and have rebelled from God and are receiving the penalty that is due them because God is just and he is righteous? You know, if you're here this morning and you don't know for certain where you stand on Judgment Day, let me tell you about another day. There's another day in which the trees of the field sang for joy. Not literally, but that was the idea when the people took palm branches and waved them in front of Jesus. On the first Palm Sunday, the trees of the field shouted for joy as the people cut trees on Palm Sunday when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on a donkey. The people took tree branches and shouted out in praise, Hosanna, meaning God save us. God save us. You see, Jesus on that day was riding into Jerusalem because of Judgment Day. Because of Judgment Day. He was riding to the cross. See, on the cross, God's wrath against sin was poured out on Jesus. He died in the place of his people. And so with joy, Jesus suffered punishment for sin. He suffered the punishment that you and I deserved on that day. And if you believe in him, if you trust in him, you will not suffer on Judgment Day, but instead on Judgment Day you will know his joy. See, Jesus gives you his joy because he took the suffering and the punishment that you deserve. This is what is called the gospel. And it's actually incredibly good news for the world. For those of us who are followers of Jesus, this is the message that we believe, and it's the message that we are to joyfully proclaim to the nations around us. After this time, Tucker is actually going to have a time of training in which we will learn how to do this more. And so I've intentionally not really elaborated on this part now, other than to say this is our message, this is our story, and we're called to tell the nations of the world. So in closing, do you see how the creation is singing out all these wonderful things to God? It's calling us to orthodox worship. We have a faith worth sharing, don't we? We have a faith worth telling. We know one who is most glorious, and in his glory, he has the strength for us to put all of our lives upon. When we worship God, we can give him our hearts and we can give him our lives. We can give him our hopes and we can rejoice in him. Why? Because he's glorious and he's strong and he's lasting. He can handle that, unlike the idols of the world. So we have one who's glorious and worthy of our worship. We have a community here, a community of faith, united together, a multi-ethnic community in which we together can confess our faith and we can confess to whom we belong to. And lastly, we have a gospel message, one that is so good to proclaim to the nations. It's good news for us, and it's good news to our very lost world. Let's pray.